We have more interesting news from Maui because not only are they downplaying this number, and like I said, go see my video, Lahaina on Fire, where we talk about this. A lot of the people we talk to people who escaped the fires and the flames, and a lot of them, the majority of them are saying this is ridiculous, that number one, they're giving so much money to the Ukraine and no money to the Lahaina citizens, and they're downplaying the number of people dead, right? They're going backwards. Somehow, they went backwards. But this is something else that's happening. When you talk about the people in Ukraine getting money and the people in Lahaina don't get money, temporary housing at Maui hotels and for some families. This is bad. This is just on Friday over here. As of 2 p.m. on Saturday, as many as 400 families displaced by the Maui wildfires were looking at having to vacate their hotel rooms as temporary lodging. But that number was likely to drop, an American Red Cross official said. Fire survivors were given until Friday to get approval from the Red Cross for continued temporary shelter under its non-congregate shelter program. This is from the Star Advisor. For the past 45 days, the programs provided lodging at 39 hotels at other properties for about 3,200 households or 7,800 people whose homes were destroyed or made uninhabitable by the fires in Lahaina and upcountry. Many have just left the hotels because they are not eligible, mostly because they did not reside in Maui before the disaster, or their homes were not made uninhabitable by the fires, Red Cross Deputy Coordinator Adam Runkle said Saturday afternoon. So what the Star Advisor is saying is that pretty much these people didn't live there, they were homeless, now they came in there, whatnot, but that's not the truth. What it is that a lot of people didn't have the paperwork. What about immigrants that don't have paperwork, right? What about the homeless people who didn't have the proper paperwork? It was more about having the proper paperwork. Now, when they do a good job, we're gonna praise them. A lot of times they bust our chops. These people busted Jimmy's chops. They busted me and Fiorella's chops before at times, but sometimes they do some great work. I'm going to highlight it when they do good work, like they did this time. The World Socialist website. Report from Lahaina. Maui fire victims faced evictions and cutoffs. In the working class neighborhood of Lahaina, immigrants, including the undocumented, are among those displaced by the fire. Pointing that out, and this is true right now. Immigrants and, undocumented. So if you don't have the proper documentation, despite you losing your house, you're out in the streets. And there are people, too, that are not illegal, I'm going to use the term, undocumented or immigrants that don't have the proper paperwork, and they can't stay either. Fearful of immigration authorities and police, they are having a difficult time navigating through the hurdles, and they do not have qualifying documents to maintain aid. It's not having the proper documents. For many more, they are too afraid to come forward and ask for help for fear of deportation. The World Socialist website spoke with Eddie, who is currently assisting a friend facing expulsion from temporary housing, hotel housing. He told the World Socialist website, "Right now, I'm on my way to help a friend. When the fire came through, this woman had to leave quickly to save her own life. She doesn't have papers or documents, things that the authorities are asking people to produce to qualify for aid." Can you imagine? A lot of the paperwork was in your house. Your house gets burned down. You can't prove that you don't have the documentation. It's going to take forever to replace the documentation. You don't have the documentation to get the new documentation, and they're throwing your ass out in the streets. Well, she escaped, and everything she had was burned in the fire. She has no documents. That's not right, he continued. If you're missing certain paperwork, you can't get help. I don't think that's fair. People may or may not have had documents, but when the fire hit, any existing documents for some people burned up. And now they are being expelled. It's way too soon to be doing this. People are still dealing with the trauma and barely getting through. Can you imagine this? The fact that they're sending all this money, they're arguing to send all this money to Ukraine, and they won't even help these people out. The federal government won't step in. 7 weeks after a fire, the biggest fire in the history of the United States, they're downplaying the number, and now they're throwing people out in the streets. They don't have money to help the homeless. They don't have money to help immigrants. They don't have money to help the citizens who lost everything, but they have money to fund war. This is crazy, and this is why I went to Lahaina. The housing situation is a big issue right now, and it's definitely underfunded. Even consider the homelessness of Lahaina. They are totally displaced. The bush or the tree that they slept under is gone, and now they have nowhere to go. So even the homeless now are asked out, and it's completely underfunded. But once again, United States government, billions for Ukraine, nothing for the citizens of Lahaina. And this is why we went. Now, I have another clip from a gentleman who went to one of the city hall meetings the other day. I'm not going to agree with everything he says, but the majority, the crux of what he's talking about, the fact that people are getting thrown out on their asses, that's the hard part to deal with. That's the part we should be pushing back against. What happened in Lahaina is a tragedy. And that's why I went there, to highlight these stories. I felt very much what happened in Nolens, when Katrina, when the mainstream media just said, oh, time to pack up and go home, the story's over. I said, no. These people have a story over there that's not being told. Over there, it felt like a gentrification. Over here, it feels like a managed, organized gentrification. Here's a citizen at one of the town halls talking about what he had to experience the other day now that he's getting thrown out on his ass. A lot of people just left.
I have Matthew Nichols next.
So, on our lunch break, we went back to our Hanakai hotel, and we were told by Red Cross we were being kicked out in 72 hours.
Listen to his voice. I mean, this is sad. This is tragic, ladies and gentlemen. And it's just absurd that our country has all this money for all the war. Putin's a madman. Hey, Jabal Momin, what about this guy? What about this American citizen over here?
And we were told by Red Cross we were being kicked out in 72 hours. Due to Red Cross not knowing what Ohana housing is, they have put people in the wrong things, and so they can't separate them. So we are all listed as a 9-person household instead of 3. They are unwilling to help us. I've been to over 8 hotels in 40 hours sitting there. On Monday, I sat there and watched as a lady cried because her kids can't come back to this side because she's being kicked out of her hotel. As I sat there for 3 hours, freezing, waiting for someone to speak to, waiting for someone to get housing, because after the fire, I lived in a food truck. Up until 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had nowhere to go because we chose our animals because they deserve a place to live too. Not all of our animals survived. So today, when I left you, I told you there was a fire burning on this island right now. A fire burning as we speak in this meeting, and there's nothing that people can do. Do you know how hopeless we feel? I'm not even from this island. I've lived here since July, and I moved here to be with someone that I loved because they're from Lahaina, born and raised. And I believed in this lifestyle and in this thing of being aloha. What aloha is there? I was told 72 hours I'm kicked out, and I walk down this pathway and there's tourists playing beer pong on their lanais. You want me to sit there and tell you I'm not going to revolt? You want me to tell you I'm not going to do nothing when this is what's looking at us? A week after the fire, I worked at a shave ice shop, and I had a tourist look at me because I'm white and have the nerve to say, should I stay on this island or should I go because my money's pumping your economy? Do you know what that feels like? When you go home at night and you look around your homes and you see your photos and you see your belongings, we have nothing. I have nothing of my grandparents anymore. I have nothing. I don't get a look at a photo of anything. I will never get these photos back. No one from Lahaina ever will. And you know what's the most disgusting thing I heard today? Your high school has no evacuation plan. The amount of mass shootings going on in this country and there's no evacuation plans for your schools. Do you not feel ashamed of yourselves sitting in front of us? You want to know something? I'm from Tucson, Arizona, where water rights are for the people. The water should go 50% for us, 50% for something else. I drove around Hana for the first time 2 weeks this week. Half of it's beautiful. Half of it's green. Half of it is a barren wasteland that looks like the desert I came from. This is a tropical island. Where is the water? You know where the water is? It's running down the sidewalks of the hotels. I count it 6 times a day the grass is watered. I grew up in a place that grass doesn't need watering for 2 weeks. You have to mow your grass once a week in this area because you're overwatering. You don't need to mow your grass for once a month in the mainland because it survives. You are literally stealing from the people and giving water to who? To tourists? So I have one last thing for you.
He goes on to talk about, what he thinks that maybe we shouldn't have so many Airbnbs for the tourists, whatnot. I mean, this is something you might agree or not agree with, that, we should, subject the water to those who need it most, the people. And that's the whole story we talked about. This is something we touched upon briefly in Lahaina on Fire. The fact that there's been mass water diversion for many years. I didn't concentrate on what caused this fire. I concentrated on the conditions which led up to Lahaina being a tinderbox. When the sugarcane industry left, they stopped irrigating that area. The grass that was brought in for the cattle is indigenous of Africa and just burns so much, so easily, so quick. In 2018, they had a fire there. They had a warning. But the politicians and the government did nothing to change it. But what they did do, which like Governor Josh Green, is they were the keynote speaker, right, at the UN for Sustainable Cities, 15-minute cities, just months before this fire took place. And now they don't want to give everybody any answers. There's no transparency. They don't want to let everybody know why there was so many breakdowns. So that everything we heard before we went was confirmed. The policemen kept people in from escaping certain parts. The water wasn't turned on, which is one of the biggest mysteries. Nobody sounded the alarms. Nobody got text messages. And when there was a false warning that there was a missile coming, everybody got a text message. The alarms went off. They said they didn't sound the alarms because it's only for tsunamis when it says on their website, and plain as day, for wildfires. All those things were confirmed. We also pointed out that the fact is that they did need tourism for the whole rest of the island. Unfortunately, 80% of the money that comes into Maui comes in via tourism. So we went to Hana, he talked about, and we saw people who were struggling financially because the governor sent the wrong message. And you don't have to listen to Craig Pastor Jardula say it. You can watch the video and see the people of Lahaina say it. It was the wrong message. We need help on the other parts of the island. Unfortunate as it may be, the majority of the money that comes in, tourism. So we need tourists to come to the other sides, right? To be respectful of those people of Lahaina and let them mourn. But the rest of the island, they need our help. So many questions were answered. And, seeing these distribution centers that we now are hearing, they're starting to mess with them. One of the representatives of Hawaii went to the governor and says he wants to have an emergency proclamation so they can shut down, audit, and look at these GoFundMes, Give, Send, Goes, and whatnot. So they're going to use the bad apples to close down the good apples. Because why? It's a scam. Because there's people involved, and they want all the funding to go through these NGOs or state functions. So those people who make that money, who skim off the top, like we saw Oprah and Rock's funding their foundation, where there's people who got to get paid first before that money gets into the hands of the citizens. We were able to go and show those distribution centers and get money right into their hands, and you guys did an amazing job. So please go check out Lahaina on Fire, guys. It's on my YouTube. We answer a lot of these questions, and just seeing Ellie Cochran today, who I've praised so much for showing up and showing her faces and not hiding. I don't know what her politics are like. I don't know. I don't care at this point. I just know that she's one of the only person there. Nobody else wants to stay there and face the fire. Her co-workers, right? The other representatives, where are they at? So I give respect to Ellie Cochran. I give respect for her for pointing out the fact that they're downplaying this number of people dead. And in that video that I filmed, you'll see people, the citizens of Lahaina, say the same thing. It's a slap in the face. They're downplaying it. And now they're throwing people out on their ass. Like I said, it was not as important to understand why the fire started as to saving these people right now. The orchestrated gentrification, the managed gentrification, how do we stop that? We help the people of Lahaina stay in Lahaina, like this guy and all the other citizens. Now they're telling them exit stage left. They're not going to be able to stay there, guys. They're going to have to leave that island. Some of them will leave that island for good. And who will swoop in? The venture capitalist.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Tampa, Boca Raton, Orlando, Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.